welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is military affairs, and this is part 3 of military equipment being used in the Russian Ukrainian special military operation or war, depending on which side of the fence you sit. And the reason why I'm actually discussing it is well, we all hear about narratives which are continuously distributed in the media, but from an armchair or from our view from in front of the computer, we don't really understand what are the limitations in terms of military equipment and capability, and what problems the two militaries, the Russians and the Ukrainians, experience. So this is not an in-depth analysis of all the weapons, as I've stated before. And today's topic is, or focus is on air defense systems. Now, we all should know that UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, play a huge role in modern warfare because they are used firstly for reconnaissance. And then secondly, also you have typical systems like the American Patriots, not Patriots, but that system now, Predator drones, which are armed and then can launch a precision strike. And then we have suicide drones. And suicide drones do carry a small explosive load, but they are effective against certain items or targets. Then we have cruise missiles, which have been extensively being used by the Russian military in order to do precision strikes on certain valuable targets in Ukraine. And then actually we have the proper air defense systems, which are basically against fighter aircrafts, fixed wings, and helicopters. Now, the latter, we can talk about the S-300 briefly, but this is not the focus of this video. Well, Zelensky has recently made a request, or he has done it before, that he needs air defense equipment, and especially, well, there were some cruise missile attacks at the beginning of the SMO, but then they did for a couple of months, destroying certain targets, and then they effectively reduced to a trickle. But the cruise missiles or the UAV attacks have increased again after the sabotage of the Kerch Bridge, the Crimean Bridge, if you want to be more precise. And that has gone on for about 2 or 3 days, or maybe a little bit more. And that's prompted Zelensky to insist on air defense systems. And Germany has supplied one system, and the Americans are preparing to supply 2 systems. Well, 1 system as well. Well, the German one is the RST version, and the American Norwegian variation is the NASAMS. And I've discussed it in my previous video in part 2. I will leave a link to the video, and you can watch it. But today I would like to more concentrate on the call it the Russian, Ukrainian air defense systems. And why the Ukrainians? Because they have inherited a lot of the Soviet type of air defense systems. And even some of the Russians are also using the old air defense systems, as well as the newer ones as well. But recently, I think it was a couple of days back or a week back, the S-300 has achieved a world record by shooting down 2 aircrafts at a very long distance. I think it's 217 kilometers far, and both aircrafts were disabled and shot down. Now, the previous record was handled by the S4, but the S4 is an advanced version of the S300, or sorry, S400. It's an advanced version of the S300. And then we got the S500, which is even a more advanced system. Now, usually these type of systems, well, air defense systems consist out of actually 3 parts. Well, 4 parts if you really want to be now picky. The one is basically the transport vehicle. They are all self-driven, mobile. Then they have the rocket systems, and then they have an acquisition radar, and then they have a targeting radar. And sometimes these the radars are and the command post, control posts are in different vehicles. But we, in the modern short to medium range and air defense systems of Russia, these things are all incorporated on a single vehicle. So you can use these air defense as a single unit, but they are not always implemented in this way. They do form a battery, and you can group a lot of batteries together, have a separate command vehicle and a separate radar vehicle, and the command and control vehicle can then communicate with each of these launchers or separate systems, and they can target a lot of aircrafts or threats, if you want to call it like that, at a single time, and then control whichever launcher platform they selected in order to destroy that target. Air defenses are mostly used in order to, well, I have discussed it before in some previous video, to protect valuable assets. Now, valuable assets can be their S300, 400, and 500 systems, critical infrastructures like certain bridges, maybe the dam, the Karakova dam that is now in a Kherson region, which is being threatened to be blown up. Nuclear power stations can be protected, which hasn't been really done, but it was more attacked by artillery. And then troop concentrations and armored divisions. So these systems have been developed for specific tasks, and that's how we're going to look at it. Now, before I start, I would like you to concentrate on the range of these radar systems, the range of the missiles, and effectively how much the size of the missiles, because it gives you an idea on the cost involved and how they're going to shoot down whatever threat they are. Now, well, I've talked about the UAVs, and using an S300 system on a UAV is a totally overkill. And because the S300 systems are very expensive, it's not an effective and efficient means of destroying UAVs, especially if they are very small. But small ones can still do a lot of damage. So you have to confront the threat and destroy it before it destroys some assets from you. So let's get going, and let's see what's happening. Now, the first thing we're going to look at, as I said, but just briefly, is this is a photograph of the S300 system, and you can see there's a launcher which carries 4 big missiles, and then you have a radar system which also will contain the control systems. Now, the cost of the S300 system is approximately about $115 million, and the cost of each missile is $1 million. So you can see it is a quite an expensive system, and therefore a valuable asset, which has to be protected. Now, in my previous videos, I also talked about the Iraqi war and how America basically ensured air supremacy. And after they have destroyed all of the air defense systems, they could, at their own leisure, destroy troop formations, tanks, and any other infrastructure that they desire to do so. So, and if you cannot protect your assets, then you might as well give over and admit defeat. So air defenses are very, very, very important. The S-300 is also being used by the Ukrainians, but you do sometimes see that in the Russian daily report of the Russian military ministry, that they do sometimes destroy the S-300 launchers. Sometimes they do destroy the radar systems. And so they are slowly but surely destroying the air defense systems of the Ukraine. I also read somewhere that the S-300 also have a lot of decoys. So it's part of the, call it package. So sometimes if you try to attack these systems, you might blow up a decoy, not the real thing. Now, what I would really like to talk about, well, this was just an introduction. What I really would like to talk is about 4 smaller, well, short to medium range air defense systems that are used by Ukrainian. Ukrainian has effectively only one proper air defense systems. Remember, we are not talking about Stingers and shoulder launch ones and so on. We are talking about decent short to medium range air defense systems. Now, the Ukrainians have some leftover equipment from the Soviet era, and that's called OSA. It's a 9K33 OSA, which is a mobile and amphibious system. And this system, well, that's the only one that they really have. And then the Russians have the Tor missile system, the Tanguska missile system, and the more modern Pantsir missile systems. They also have some of these OSA missile systems in the same way as the Ukrainians. And I will go through each one of them. Now, just for interstate, the Tor missile systems and the OSA are pure missile systems. They only fire missile in a very similar manner than the RST and the American NASAMS. And again, I would like to point out that if you want to use these things for air defenses and you have to shoot down small drones, then even these systems are partially an overkill and a very expensive system to operate. I have, in my previous video, I discussed the cost of each missile and of each system. The Russian Pantsir system was actually supposed to be a replacement for the Tanguska, but the Tanguska is still being produced, and the estimated date is up to about 2027. The Pantsir system is basically the most modern one, and it has been used in Syria and other conflicts as well. Now, there are some reports that some of these Pantsir systems have been destroyed, and that sort of is alleged that about the ineffectiveness. But if you really read carefully, then one Pantsir was destroyed while it was being reloaded. And one system was destroyed in a hangar when it was inoperable and that wasn't functioning or wasn't used at that stage. And then if you listen, or if you notice that air defense systems have certain limitations. they only carry so many missiles, and they only carry so many other armaments, and they can only track so many missiles at this stage. And you have to think about how you, as a commander, how would you distribute your air defenses over a city that has a certain diameter, say 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers diameter city, and how are you going to place these air defense systems to become effective? Because you have to notice, well, you have to consider their limitations. They are not long distance ones, they are fairly short distance systems. And in the case of the Tanguska and in the Pantsir, they even have 30 millimeter dual cannons in conjunction with a missile system. So when I go through these type of systems, then you have to consider it from a tactical point or strategic perspective on how you, as a commander, will use these air defense systems. Also, if you have noticed that in these daily military reports, the Russians are shooting down several of these high-mast rockets, and also the what do they call it? The Tanguska, which are both a ballistic type of missiles that are being fired at the Russian forces. And you also have probably heard about some reports or read some reports that the Ukrainian forces are using HIMARS projectiles, which is effectively the M27 multiple launch rocket system, to attack civilian targets in the Donetsk and now also in Kherson. And then you have to ask yourself, but why cannot Russia prevent this by the air defenses? And again, you have to look at how many of these systems the Russians have available, how long the front line is, and what are the limitations of these systems. And if you do understand that, then you can understand why it is impossible for the Russians to eliminate all HIMARS projectiles or the Tanguska ballistic missiles attacks. And that would give you a better perspective on what's really happening on the front. So let's go on, and now we're going to talk about the older system, which is the 9K33 OSA. Here's a very nice photograph of it. It is ugly as hell, but the Russians were never renowned for making any beautiful weapon systems. Now, the system was developed in the Soviet Union in the 1960s, and it was fielded the first time in 1972. It is self-propelled, fully amphibious, and air-transportable vehicle air defense systems. And these systems have been built from about 1970 up till 1988. And the total volume of these have been built is about 1,200 units. Now, one must just remember that no design is static. And there are a lot of modifications and improvements being done throughout the history of any systems. Now, the latest variant of this edify of the OSA is called the OSA/M. Again, it has main armaments are the missiles. It carries 6 of them. And as you can see, it has various versions and more improved versions as the missiles were developed. Initially, it was the 9M33, and then it became the 9M33M1, and then it ended later on with the 9M33M3. So you can see there were about, well, four different upgrades versions of the missile system itself. Currently, the maximum range of these missiles are 15 kilometers, And the maximum altitude that these missiles can reach is 12 kilometers. Now again, just for intersects, to give you some idea, the length of the missiles are about 3.2 meters long. The diameter is about 210 millimeters. And a missile weighs 170 kilograms. Now that is the armament. It only carries the missiles. And you can see this is now not very efficient for small UAEs. For bigger UAEs like the Predator, yes, or the Turkish one, the Balaklaya, come on, I'm very bad with names. You have to excuse me there. But in any case, the Turkish version, that is where these missiles would be very effective. And we also know that the Turkish UAV doesn't have a long life expectancy in the current conflict. And they are used mainly by the Ukrainians. So this is one part of the system. The other part of the systems are the radars. I'm not going to tell you what type of band and how they function, but the acquisition range to obtain targets for these radars on this system is about 30 kilometers. That means you can detect a threat 30 kilometers away. And then the maximum tracking range, that means that if he has to fire the missile, then he has to track the target. These missiles are usually linked by encrypted radio signals. And that is how these missiles are guided. So the system can effectively shoot down a threat, aviation threat. Would that be a proper expression in English? Yeah, okay, whatever. At a distance of 20 kilometers. And the runners are also designed, the later versions, that they can target they can attack two targets at any single time. But usually what the Russians do is, in the operational guidelines, they usually fire two missiles at any target. Now the probability, again, this is an older system, of hitting a single fighter is anything between 50 and 85%. And the accuracy of the system is 5 meters, then it can detonate. And the system is operated by a crew of 5. Now, this is the one that should be, like I said, used by Ukrainians as well as the Russians. Now, if you have looked at the whole war, you will find, well, you should have noticed that a lot of old weapons, while the Ukrainians have mostly Soviet-era weapons, because those were left when the Soviet broke up. The Russians are also using fairly old equipment because they know how to operate them, and they are redundant or have been put into storage. And I specifically do talk about the T-62 tank that they were using, which I addressed in the first part of the series, and how they used it, and then the T-72, and they never used their most advanced tanks or any other equipment. So I believe the idea is that the Russians feel that they're first going to use up all the old equipment, very similar to what the West has done. They have supplied all the old surplus weapons to Ukraine. So this is like a trend how this war is going to be created. And that's why this OSA system is still being used by both forces. So now we go look at the Tor system. It's called the Tor M2KM anti-aircraft missile system. It's a more modern version of the OSA system. And it is basically an all-weather, low to medium altitude, short-range surface-to-air missile designed by destroying airplanes, helicopters, cruise missiles, UAVs, and any short ballistic missiles, like the Tanguska and the MLS. Now, this is a more modern version. It was first produced in 1983, and basically it's going to be, it has upgraded, and it will be manufactured until a planned end date of 2027. Now again, it's very similar to the OSA. It has only a missile system. And the latest variant is the Tor M2KM. And about, in total, 800 of these units were built by Russia. The main armament, you can actually have a nice photograph of that. The main armament is the 9M331 missile, and the system can carry about 8 of them. And that was the original design for, but like I said, UAVs are becoming a big threat and a big target, even smaller ones. So they developed another missile, and now this unit can carry 16 of these new missiles. The maximum range of these missiles is 16 kilometers, and the maximum altitude is 10 kilometers. That means you can shoot down a UAV that travels at a height of 10 kilometers. Again, just putting it into context to get a feel for the size, the length of this missile is 2.9 meters, the diameter is 235 millimeters, and the total weight is 167 kilograms. Very similar to the missiles being used in OSA. Target of the acquisition range of the radars is 25 kilometers, and the maximum tracking range is 20 kilometers. Again, it is the distance that it can shoot down physically an aerial target. Yeah, that's a better word. So you can see the specs are very similar to the OSA, but it's a much more modern system. And this one can track actually 4 targets at any single time. So effectively, it can shoot down 4 targets at any single time. It has been tested, and it has been found that the probability of hitting a small high-speed target is 100%. Therefore, its effectiveness has hugely increased. The crew has also been reduced from 5, and it's only now 3. And the unit cost is only 25 million US dollar. Yes, it's still expensive, but it's not the cost of an S300 or 400. So, again, as I explained, a typical battery consists out of 4 Tor vehicles, we'll call it launchers, and it's usually then accompanied by a mobile Russian M, which is a command center, and which provides an automatic interactions with the Tor systems, the OSA systems, the Tanguska systems, and probably now as well with the Pantsir. So these command systems or command vehicles have the ability to interlink with all these systems and select the best option for the threat that is being done. They have the capability of targeting threats, much more threats at any single time. So as you can see, this is a very, very powerful complex, which is all interoperable. They are connected by a radio link to each other, encrypted radio link, and therefore they don't have to be in the same position. Now again, think about if you were the commander and you had to protect, say you were the commander of Kiev, and you had to protect Kiev. How are you going to set up your air defense systems? How many units do you have? What are the distance? Remember, this is a radial distance. So think about how you're going to overlap the certain radial distance or coverage of each unit. And then you will find it's not a very easy thing. And if you only use the OSA or the, which the Ukrainians have, then they only have missiles. And yesterday I read a report they're actually running out of ground-to-air missiles. So even these OSA systems that they do have, the ammunition is running out. So let's look at the next system. And this is the Tanguska. Here's a very nice picture of it. Now the Tanguska is a Soviet and now a Russian self-propelled anti-aircraft weapon with a surface-to-air gun and a missile system. Now this armament makes it much more versatile. It is designed to provide day and night protection for infantry and tank regiments, as I have stated, and against low-air flying aircraft, helicopters, and cruise missiles, as well as UAVs. So again, you have to protect your soldiers, your infantry, and your tank divisions against any form of ballistic missiles or guided missiles or attack aircrafts or helicopters. This is essential. But let's look at the specification. The Tanguska was the first time produced in 1976 and is being earmarked to be produced until present. The number of these units were about 600 built, and the latest variant is the Tanguska M1. I just want to add something else because I haven't actually mentioned it. A lot of these items have been exported, so Russia is not the only country that operates these systems. Now, again, the main armament is 8 missiles of the 9M311 M1 missiles. And they have now developed a new missile, which is called the Russians like numbers, 57E6, which have a much more cost-effective, accurately, and longer distance. Now, the secondary armament, as I've indicated, is a 2 twin-barrel 30mm 2A38M guns, and each of these units carry about 1,904 rounds for these guns. The missile maximum range of the original missiles was about 10 kilometers, but with the new missile it has been extended to 18 kilometers. And the missile maximum altitude was original 5 kilometers, but now it's 15 kilometers. Which means that even a predator drone can't evade it. The gun's maximum range is 4 kilometers, which is also a sizable, nice distance. And the rate of each of these guns are 2,500 rounds per minute for each gun. And usually what they do is they fire in very short bursts. The length of the missile, again, to give you some perspective, is 2.6 meters long. It has a diameter of 120 millimeter, and it has a total weight of only 57 kilograms. So it's not that that heavy or large missile that you used earlier, and this thing is much more efficient and actually more cost effective. Looking at the radars have an acquisition range of 18 kilometers, the original one. It has now been upgraded to 38 kilometers. And the maximum tracking range is 16 kilometers, and the new version have 30 kilometers. So as you can see, just for instance, the HIMARS has an average firing range of 35 kilometers. And with this other version, it can go up to, I think, 45 kilometers. And with another version, they have a range of about 70, 80 kilometers. And now think about this system has to target and destroy the HIMARS. And how you're going to place it again? Well, you can't use it in Kiev because Kiev doesn't have these systems. But now think about how the Russians going to deploy it around Kherson. Of course, Kherson is still bombed, and Donetsk is still bombed. In any case, again, unfortunately, this older version of the Tanguska can only target one aerial threat, which makes it a little bit limited. But a complete system or battery consists usually out of 6 of these Tanguskas, and then it's controlled by a separate radar system. and command and control system, and then you can cover a lot bigger area. Again, tests showed that hitting of small high-speed targets is about 100%. 100%. Again, the higher the target is, the higher the probability of catching it. The lower the target, the more difficult is it to hit that target. So yes, you can have a nice efficiency of probability, or how you want to call it, of 100% if the item is flying very high. But if a helicopter or a fighter bomber attacks at low altitude, then the success rate will decrease up to about 45%. Just keep that in mind. Now, again, the crew of this system is only 3, and each unit costs about $16 million. Again, not too expensive. It has 2 armament systems, dual armament systems. One for high-flying items and bigger objects, and the air guns for smaller objects, being much more efficient. The ammunition of these guns do have proximity fuses inside. They do have a timed explosion. I don't know, like in the old Second World War, you had these flags that go up and poof after a certain height. And naturally, they can also be used against ground targets. So now we come to the most modern version, and I believe this is one of the not the better, but the system that distinguishes the Russian system from even the best systems in the West. This system is far superior to anything that the Americans or Europeans have. Now, I could have discussed the area of the systems, air defense systems that the other countries have, but the stuff is very old. The technology isn't up to date. Even the French versions cannot compete against these Russian systems. And the American systems haven't been really developed because they always made dependent on air superiority and stuff like that. So the West is falling far behind in terms of air defenses, as well as missile technology. And now we come to the Pantsir missile system. The original one was a Pantsir S1, and it was designed, again, to provide point air defenses of military, industrial, and administrative installations against aircraft, helicopter, precision ammunitions, cruise missiles, and UAVs, and to provide additional protections to air defense units as the S-300 against enemy air attacks. We are talking about these anti-radar harm missiles that were given by the US to the Ukrainians. And according to the daily reports of the Russian Ministry of Defense, they do shoot down the HIMARS projectiles, and they do shoot down these harm missiles. And what makes this Pantsir system especially powerful, it is very effective at low to extremely low altitude enemy threats. Okay, English. Well, here you can see a nice picture. Looks very nice. It seems to me the Russians have improved have beautified the equipment. So let's get to the data. It was produced in 2008 until now. At this stage, there's about 200 of these units built. I think the Russians have about 170. I'm not totally sure. The latest variant is the Pantsir SM. Again, it has 8 missiles, much more modern versions. I can say it's called the 95YA6. It started off with, and the latest missiles are the 57E6M-E. What the hell that means, I don't know. It's just marketing in any case. As the Tanguska, it has a secondary armament, and it has the same two twin-barrel 30mm guns, carrying the same amount of ammunition. The missile maximum range is 18 kilometers with the original system. It has now been, with the new missiles, it has been increased to 30 kilometers. And the maximum altitude was 15 kilometers, now 18 kilometers. Again, since the guns are the same, maximum range of the guns is 4 kilometers. The length of these missiles are 3.16 meters long, and the diameter is only 90 millimeters, and it weighs a little bit more than the Tanguskas. This one weighs about 94 kilometers. Again, one of the most important parts of any of these systems is the radar. The acquisition range against most targets was 34 kilometers. The upgraded versions now have 75 kilometers, which is a huge increase. And the maximum tracking range was original 25 kilometers. It's now 40 kilometers. So this is a huge difference, especially going against HIMARS and the other cruise missiles. And what has also increased is that the number of targets that can be engaged simultaneously has been increased to 4, which is a huge improvement on the Tanguska. And in the same thing, again, missiles, radar, and against small high-speed targets is 100% under test conditions. The crew is 3, but it can, well, it's 2 in a command crew and 1 driver, but the whole unit can be actually operated by a single person. And the cost of this unit is a lot less. It's $14 million US. And again, a battery consists out of 6 of these Pantsir vehicles. Just remember, I haven't mentioned it actually, but all these systems have some form of armor which will protect them against small fire. They are not armored in the same sense like a tank, which would be ridiculous in any case, but they can sustain small arms fire. So they are not like totally defenseless or vulnerable. It also protects them against some shrapnel from artillery. So unless you have a direct hit, then that would be survivable. Now, these are the 4 main systems that are currently in used in Ukraine. As you can see, the Russians have a significant capability. I still don't personally understand how many they have put to the front. They wouldn't have pushed all of the front. They needed in the rest of Russia as well. Why there are still some high-mast missile systems, missiles explode in Kherson and Donetsk, I'm also not totally sure. But maybe they are all artillery shells, and artillery can go about 40 kilometers. And I will actually handle artillery pieces in the next video. And then the one after that, I will handle the artillery detection systems, or how do they call it? Artillery defensive systems, acquisition. In any case, these systems were developed in order to determine from where artillery shell has been fired, so that a counter artillery can be put on a target and destroy that target. I haven't got the English name now. So again, listen to the systems, and if you really want to not blame the Russian command, but if you want to criticize them, then first make sure that you know what you are talking about. And every system has a limitation. And usually what you want to do, if I was the enemy and I would have destroyed a certain target and I knew there was air defenses, then I would have firstly overwhelm them. So instead of firing one missile, I will fire, say, 10, overwhelm the air defense system, and some of them will reach a target and destroy it. If you also look at now, also, you cannot have full coverage, so you must decide on which asset you want to protect and how you position your vehicles. And this is no easy task, as you can see. There are always limitations. So now you have the missile attacks on Ukraine by the Russians. They have used some bigger cruise missiles, yes. But of late they use a lot of suicide drones. And it has become quite effective. And we now have to ask you questions, why are the Russians now using these smaller suicide drones? Well, they are a lot cheaper, number one. Number two is if they are shot down, well, you can send them in huge quantities, you can send them over. So you can overwhelm the air defenses of Ukraine if they are still existing. And if they exist, they have to shoot down. And how do they shoot it down? They shoot it down with a missile system, the OSAS, the OSA, and they are running out of ammunition. I mean, how many of these missiles can you have? So the Russians are basically depleting the air defenses of the Ukrainian military in Kiev. They're still destroying the targets because it's not that easy. It's a small UAV. It is quite frightening, I understand, because you can hear it from a long distance, so it has some effect on the population. Something similar like the bombing of German cities or the bombing of London. As a civilian, I don't think you would like it very much. Although the Russians are only targeting military installations. There was one UAV that actually bombed a flat unit, but I believe it was actually shot down and then it deviated from course and it crashed into that unit. But be that as it may. I hope this information was helpful, and please check out the other videos in the link of the description. Those are also important weapon systems that are currently being used. And subscribe to the channel, and let's see when I prepare the next part and we talk about artillery pieces and artillery acquisition targeting systems, English. Spread the word, let the channel grow, and hopefully we can all learn something. And until next time, cheers.